Welcome to objectiF RPM, a tool that supports you with application lifecycle management in many ways. Making ever-changing business needs into IT systems and products and transforming them into value for a business. This is the core of application lifecycle management. The application lifecycle begins with the analysis of stakeholders and their goals. objectiF RPM offers a strong way to express this with goal diagrams. They help, amongst other things, to dismantle goals and to recognize conflicts. Would you like an overview of stakeholders and their goals as a list? Here it is. Would you prefer to have this list in Excel? No problem. The Excel import-export function is just one example of objectiF RPM's many interfaces. Often, requirements already derive from the goals of stakeholders, like this one here. Even at the highest level, it is worthwhile to analyze requirements with graphics, in the requirements diagram of the system modeling language. Here you see an example of it. It contains, amongst other things, the refinements of requirements represented through content relationships. Even relationships between requirements to other artifacts, like here to a test case, can be mapped. Let's look more closely at a requirement. Here you can find all the information that exists in the central repository of objectiF RPM. Explicitly entered information, calculated, like the summarized plan effort, or information that resulted from modeling. Every artifact, and with it every requirement, can be versioned when needed. That means that with objectiF RPM, you work review secure. Reviews can be automatically generated, for example, when changing the state, or create them if you need to. Reviews can be viewed, restored, or compared, like here. Differences are identified in detail. Where is this requirement realized? This question leads directly and traceably to the solution's design. For example, with UML class diagrams, or like here in a block definition diagram for the system design. Let's return to the requirements. You have seen that you can model requirements that you collect with forms. You can also exchange them with external partners via an interface. For agile development, you have another option, working in the product backlog. Relationships between requirements are identified here with colored bars. Every entry in the product backlog can be directly edited. You can also define the relationships between refinements, derivations, and dependencies simply with a few clicks. As the product owner, you can simply use drag and drop to put the requirements in order of priority. When descriptions and prioritizations are finished, you can make it known that descriptions and prioritizations are finished by transferring the state to evaluated. Now we go from the product backlog to the release planning. Here is the view. On the left, you can see the current state of the product backlog, and on the right, you can see, in a collapsed state, the release backlogs for the next 2 releases. To plan a requirement simply means to put it in the product backlog. If you take over a requirement as a reference, then you can see in the product backlog that the requirement is planned for a release because of the state overtaken. You have seen. Goals become requirements, requirements fill the product backlog, and can be planned into a release. But what if a process is so large that it can't be managed by, let's say, one agile team of a maximum of 7 people? How can you scale a project with as little overhead as possible? By working with multiple teams in a synchronized sprint. objectiF RPM supports this even when you add more teams in the middle of a project. Patterns help you to expand your projects with just a few clicks. Working with more teams means dividing the release backlog into a release backlog between teams. With their own release backlog, each team can carry out their own sprint planning. Now we'll change from the release planning to dividing the release backlog for individual teams. On the left, you can see the release backlog. On the right, the backlogs of the teams Genf and Berlin. These are easily allocated with drag and drop. How much capacity a team has in comparison to the already planned stories can be seen here. And now we can watch over the shoulder of the team Genf as they plan their sprint. The first sprint is already pretty much finished. The perfect time to plan the next. How that works shouldn't really be a surprise anymore. And there is the user storyboard for the current sprint, where the team shows its work progress. In projects with multiple teams, how can you keep an overview? With the classic project plan as a Gantt chart. Every team's sprints all appear here as activities. And if you look more closely at a sprint activity, you can find the planned requirements in their current states. Do you also have steps in your projects that you plan classically with work packages, along with agile development activities? Or do you decide from project to project between agile and classic processes? Then you will find just the right instrument for your project management in objectiF. How is your project going? You can see through net plans generated in a few clicks or with customizable dashboards. Evaluations, queries, and generated documentation in Word. The reporting possibilities are so diverse. The path from the stakeholders to the goals and requirements to testing the solution is completely traceable in both directions. As you have seen, traceability also exists between requirements and activities. Use cases, data models, classes, test runs, test results. The list of application lifestyle artifacts in objectiF is even longer than what we've shown here. But if you happen to be missing a specific artifact type, then you can expand objectiF accordingly and create a corresponding form to process them. A last tip, just try out objectiF for free without installation in a demonstration system that will be generated for you in the cloud when you sign up. Just a couple of clicks and you can start right away. Have fun with objectiF.